Well, hello there. This is John from Poor Man's Garage. Okay, on to the air conditioning. Okay, so your air conditioning, if you're building the V8 Mazda Miata, and you take it to your average air conditioning specialist to vacuum and charge your air conditioning system, it's going to be the minimum of $150. I guarantee it. Minimum of 150 bucks. So then, if the guy gives it a vacuum and a charge, and you got a leak, then he's going to have to vacuum the system down again and fix your leak, whether it be an O-ring or your condenser's bad or something's leaking somewhere. It's going to be another 150 bucks. Well, now you're at $300. Well, I'm going to show you how to get pretty much everything you need for $200. That includes everything. That's going to be your vacuum, your 4-way manifold, and then the R134A. Okay, so I'm just going to start kind of anywhere. Okay, so the first thing you need is where people go wrong is they put too much oil in your air conditioning system. All right, that's what I talk to a lot of professionals on the air conditioning system, and most people make the mistake is they know that oil has to go in the air conditioning system, and they put too much oil in the air conditioning system. And what happens is your clutch slips because it's having a hard time pushing the oil through the system. So when you buy a compressor, from wherever you buy it from, if it has that plug on the inlet and outlet on the compressor, it means it's already got oil in there. It means you don't add any oil to it. So that's one of the biggest mistakes is don't add more oil into your system if it already has oil into it. Now, when you decide to not do it yourself and you take it to a professional shop, they vacuum the system out, and I'm not sure if they vacuum the system out and flush it with something, or if they just vacuum it. It's a recovery system, and I'm not sure how the recovery system works. So I don't know if they recover all the used oil out of the system, and there's no oil in the system. If that's the case, I would think that the recovery system would have to flush it with something, some sort of chemical or something, to get all the oil out of your hoses and your evaporator, your condenser, and your dryer, and the whole 9 yards, which I find it hard to believe that if that's the way it works. Maybe not, I don't know, but I'm going to show you how I do it. Okay, so this is air conditioning system's been around it for 5 years, so I'm not going to add any oil to it. I'm just not going to. But what I'm using is R134A with UV leak detector. And if you look online, I bought a case of it, 12 cans of R134A with the UV leak detector for $59. That works out to be a little bit less than $5 a can. So if you go to AutoZone or you go to Advance, I don't care where you go, you'll see them cans are 15, 20 bucks. And they probably get them for $4. So, but if you look carefully online, you can find a case of it for $59 with shipping, with tax. That's what I got it for. So anyways, I'm going to show you the gauges that I have, the UV leak detector, where to hook it up at, the proper way to bleed it, and I'm going to show you the whole 9 yards. So anyways, this is where you're at. That's the vacuum pump that you need. I got this vacuum pump from Harbor Freight. Okay, vacuum pump works good. I'm not sure how much it is. I don't remember what the price is on the vacuum pump, but that's about as cheap vacuum pump as you're gonna find. All right, it says 3 CFM 2-stage vacuum pump. Like I said, this is from Harbor Freight, and Harbor Freight stuff's pretty cheap. So, all right, this is what you want to use: the R134A with UV leak detector. Like I said, I bought a case of this for $59 shipping and tax. All right, you're gonna need this. What this does is it's got a needle on the end of it, so when you hook this up to the can, and it punctures the can to put the Freon R134A into the system. So anyways, you need the Mazda Miata book, like I was telling you. on air conditioning. Okay. So here's this is a Mazda Miata service manual. So if you guys don't have one, I'm going to give you this much. Okay, right there. It says regular amount of refrigerant, 600 grams or 21.2 ounces. Okay, so we know that these cans are 12 ounces a can. All right, so 12 and 12 is 24. So you're right around 2 cans is what you need for the air conditioning system. Okay, right around 2 cans. I bleed out my hoses, and I'm going to show you me bleeding out the hoses. I'm going to tell you why I bleed out the hoses. So anyways, okay, so let's get to the car here and the manifold and the gauges. Okay, so there's the manifold. All right. Now these gauges, I bought these gauges aftermarket. They're liquid filled gauges. They didn't come with this manifold, but I bought the. You don't have to buy these gauges like these. These things are liquid filled, and they got a little screw in them. If you look at the little screw, if the gauge goes off, you turn the screw to put the gauge back to 0. But it's pretty unnecessary, and you can see that actually moved on me because I had set these gauges to 0 before we started. So let's get that fixed there, because I want my gauges to read 0 so I get an accurate reading. They said you can buy these gauges, so you just stick a screwdriver in there, and then you turn it until I read 0 on the gauge. See, I'll turn it and it's going to go back to 0. It's hard for me to hold the camera and turn the gauge and turn the screwdriver at the same time, but almost there. Is it reading 0 now? Almost reading 0. Okay, now it's reading 0. And we want this one at 0 too. That one's at 0. And that one's at 0 now. Okay. So like I said, you turn that little screw inside the gauge and it turns it back to 0. Okay, so this is the red is your high side. You want a 4-way R134 manifold gauge, okay? And the reason why you want the 4-way is because the blue, this is your low side. Okay, so you also want this type of adapter, and you also want this valve in the middle of it. So you got to find this stuff on eBay. You want a valve on what they call the low side, and you want a valve on the high side. And I'll show you here in a bit why you want that valve on there. Okay, so getting back to the manifold. So the blue, this is your low side. The black, this is our vacuum. This is very important, vacuum. Because they have them that only have the 3, but you have no way of vacuuming out the system properly. So you want the manifold that's got 4. So the blue, low side, the black, vacuum, the yellow, this is your feed where the R134A feeds into the system, and your red is your high pressure side. Okay, so let's get started on this thing here. I'm gonna see if I can find a place to put the camera where you guys can see what's going on. Okay, so anyhow, let me explain to you about this the connections. Okay, so the red, this is your high side. Okay, so your the high side on my Mazda Miata is and my fittings are loose because I bled out the system. That's why my fittings are loose. So anyways, right down there, I don't know if you can see that or not, down there, right down there, that's my high side. And you can't mess it up because the low side won't fit on the high side, and the high side won't fit on the low side. So it's kind of, they make it idiot proof, I guess you want to call it, idiot proof. So anyways, that one goes there, and then the low side, I haven't connected it yet because I can't hold the camera and connect them at the both side same time. The low side I probably can. So this is the low side. So the low side gets connected there, and then you got to make sure that all your connections are tight. All the connections. Remember, I got the shut-off valve here. It's also got a valve here. So I got a valve here that you turn in to put to open up the valve on the system. You turn this valve in. All right. You make sure this fitting's tight. This fitting's tight. This is closed off. All right. Now I got to hook up my high side. I don't think I can hook up my high side, hold the camera at the same time. No, I can't. So let me hook up the high side. I'm going to try to explain this to you guys. Okay, I'm going to hook up my high side. I hook up the high side the same as the low side. Sometimes they're a little stubborn, but it'll go. Okay, high side's hooked up. Once again, we gotta make sure those fittings are tight. Because they're all oil. So make sure your fittings from the manifold, this is all gotta be tight. Connectors, all the connections gotta be tight. They don't have to be super tight. They just gotta be hand tight. You don't have to wrench them on. You don't use a wrench. You just gotta make sure that the fittings are snug. Okay. Fittings are snug. Fittings on my low side. And then I gotta clean the oil off them so you can get a good grip on the fittings. So you can make sure that they're fairly tight. You don't want to wrench them down because it's got rubbers in them, and you wreck the rubbers and then they'll leak. So. Okay, and the same thing with my high side. I gotta take the red knob and I gotta screw it in to push the valve, the Schrader valve down on the high side. Okay. So, all right. So now, the Schrader valve's in on the high side. These are turned in all the way, and the Schrader valve's down on the low side. This valve here, this would be open. This is closed. So this is closed, and this valve is closed at this time. Okay. Now, if you look at the gauges, there's nothing. And the blue side's opening. The vacuum's open. They're all open. All these gauges are all open. Okay, right at this time. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to close this one up. This is going your inlet on your R134A inlet. And now the low side, this low side is blue. The low side and the high side are open. And the vacuum is wide open. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to make sure your high side's open now, and your low side's open, and your vacuum's open, and where you add your R134A is closed. Okay, now we got to get our vacuum pump. Okay, grab our vacuum pump. we hook our vacuum pump up to, I got a little cap here. I gotta pull the cap. Oh, easier said than done. Go get something to pull the cap with, pliers or something. Because all this stuff you gotta keep it clean, so that's why I have a cap on there. Hopefully pull the cap. Oh, I didn't break it. Didn't break it yet. Okay, let's try to unscrew the cap. Make sure I didn't put a hole in there. No, okay. Let's try unscrewing the cap. It's not really threaded, it's just a cap, but it works pretty good if you try to unscrew it. It's just like a rubber cap. So anyways, the black goes onto here. And this is probably a standard fitting for all pumps, I think. I'm not sure. So screw your black line on there and make sure it's, like I said, everything you do is going to be hand tight. You don't need any pliers for any of this. Make sure these are all tight. This is tight. Make sure everything's tight. Everything's going to be tight. Hand tight. Okay, so now let's plug in our vacuum pump. Yep. And let's turn it on. I'm not sure where the switch is. Well, isn't that interesting? Shows you how much I use this thing. I don't even know where the switch is. Oh, there's the switch right on the back. Right here. Okay. Alright, so turn our vacuum pump on. And now we'll look at our gauges. And see how our gauge right there on the low sides. See on the high side it just goes right in the negative, but this on the low side it tells you just how much of a vacuum you're pulling on it. Anyways, it's supposed to pull 30 pounds of vacuum at least. We're supposed to let it run for a half an hour. Alright. We got our Harbor Freight pump is running, and our gauge is already at negative 30. So right. I'm trying to see that light might be blinding me. Alright, so we're supposed to vacuum the system for a half an hour. Alright? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to technically vacuum the system for a half an hour. And let it run like that. Then once you vacuum the system out, then we're going to close off all the valves while the pump's running, and then you're going to check and see if that your negative 30 pounds moves. And for another half an hour, you let it sit. And if it moves from 30 pounds, it goes to 20 or something like that, you know you got a leak in the system. If you got a leak in the system. The only way that I do it is, I've never been able to, you can't find the leak in the system unless you pressurize it. So even if you got a leak in the system, technically you got to pressurize it with UV leak detector and then try to find the leak with the UV leak detector. So even if you look at the gauge and it's at 30 pounds and you let it sit for an hour and it's at 20 pounds, you know you got a leak in the system. But the only way that you can find it is you still got to pressurize the system. Alright? So anyways, I'll get back to you when the half an hour's up. See you soon. Okay, something I forgot to show you guys. Remember those valves are closed off. So now when you got the vacuum pump running, you gotta open up this valve on your low side and open up your valve on the high side. So both of these valves are currently open now. Alright, so that's how come that gauge is reading 30 pounds so fast, is because I didn't open up the low side and high side. So I just caught that a second ago. So anyways, we still gotta wait we still gotta wait a half an hour for it to vacuum down the system. So I'll when the half an hour is up, I'll turn the camera back on. Let's see some. Okay, it's been about 25 minutes. Alright, now let me show you what we got to do. Okay, now the vacuum pump's still running. Okay, see how the vacuum pump's still running? Okay. Now what you want to do is you want to shut the valve off. Alright, on the low side. The vacuum pump's still running. You shut the valve off, okay? And then we're going to shut the valve off on the high side. And then we're going to close this. This is the vacuum port. We're going to close the vacuum port. All right. Now this is still open, and this is still open. Okay. And now we're gonna close this one. We're going to close this one. Now technically, to see if you have a vacuum leak in here, you close this one and leave these two open. But these valves have to be open too. But like I said, I already know this system. I doubt it if it's got a leak. If it does have a leak, we'll find it here soon. So I'm not even going to bother doing that. So right now, everything's closed. Okay, I'm going to shut off the vacuum pump. Okay. Now, where people they make a mistake is, okay, so now you got a vacuum on your low side and you got a vacuum on your high side, and we don't have a vacuum here, but we have a vacuum here. Okay, so where people make the mistake is basically in your air conditioning system, you want no air in your air conditioning system. So what you have to do, and this is why I have these valves, is what I'll do is I'll put, see, I already got my can hooked up to here. Oh, and by the way, the way I do my system, I do it liquid only. When you're doing liquid only, you have to be very, very careful that you put it into the system very, very slow. I found that this is the best way to do it. It gives me, it makes the AC very, very cold, because you can flip it this way for gas and flip it this way for liquid. But you got to remember that you can't compress liquid. So you can't compress liquid, but this is the way I do it. Okay, but you got to be very, very, very careful and do it very, very slow into the air conditioning system. So what you want to do, basically, you want all the air out of all the lines. In order to get all the air out of all the lines, you have to, basically, I gotta puncture this can, and I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna do it right now. All right, so see. Hopefully, you guys can see this. Yeah, you guys can see this. So we're gonna puncture this can. Well, we gotta make sure it's tight. It's not tight. Okay, make sure all these fittings gotta be tight. You figure somebody's trying to tell me. Alright, fellas, hold on. Be back in a second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, we're gonna puncture this can now. So to puncture the can is you turn this in. Alright. We're gonna make sure all our valves are closed on the manifold. Everything's closed, okay. I'm going to disconnect the vacuum pump. Okay, so let's puncture our can. Alright, so now we punctured the can. So now the R134A is going to go into this hose, but it can only go so far. It can only go up to here because we got this valve closed. Alright, and we're going to put it in liquid side. So the can has to be facing this way to put the liquid side in. Alright, so now I'm going to put the can in the car kind of like that. Okay, so that's what the can looks like. Alright, so now we're going to go up to this here, and there's a valve here. I got the cap on real tight, so let's find a pair of pliers to take the cap off. So this is the yellow line now. I'm going to take the cap off. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bleed this line here until there's only R134A there. So you've got to be careful, wear gloves, because this is very, very cold and it'll burn you. Actually burn you. Okay, so you see how I pushed that valve with my finger? There's the UV leak detector. Okay, so now we know that we got R134A. The air's all gone through this line, and the only thing that's in here up to this spot is R134A. So then we're going to open this valve. Okay, everything's closed. We're going to open this one. Okay, so now that's letting the R134A up to this point in the manifold. Okay, so now what we got to do is you want to get all the air out of this line and fill it completely with R134A. But we don't want to lose the vacuum here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this side right here. So this side we're going to loosen it up. Not too much, loosen it up a little bit. And then on this gauge, I'm going to just open up this valve a little bit until it reads 10 pounds. Something like that. See, it's coming up? It's coming up? Okay, it come up real fast, so you got to be real careful with this. Be real careful because we're at 20 pounds, okay? And then I want to come back to here, and I'm going to just crack this open a little bit. You hear it? Okay. So now the air, I'm going to open this up one more time. Open it up one more time, okay. And then I'm going to open this up a little bit, and now you're letting the air out of the line, okay? So that there's only R134A in this line. I'll open it up again. Okay. So now we're getting rid of the air, but now nothing's gone into the system yet because I have this valve. This valve is closed. Okay, it's on the closed side. Okay, so now let's do the same thing to the high side. Okay, we're gonna let just a little bit of R134A. We're going to pressurize it. So now we're pressurizing the red line. This is your high side. So once again, this valve is closed, so nothing can get into the system right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up this valve a little bit, and you'll hear that hiss. Okay. Now, all right. I think I'm going to do it one more time to the low side, because I want to make sure all the air is out of the system. So I'm going to bring it up a little bit. See, I brought it up to 30 pounds there. You know, that won't hurt the system if it goes up. And then I'm going to bleed this one more time. All right. Okay, now I'm going to tighten these down. All right. And I'm going to tighten this one down. All right, so now all the air has gone completely out of this hose. All the air has gone completely out of this hose. And the air has gone completely out of the high side. So now these three right now have no air in it. So up to this point in your system, and this point in your system, you have absolutely no air. Now you got pure R134A in the hoses. Okay? And so now what we do, we gotta make sure everything's all nice and tight still. This is tight. Everything's tight. This is tight. Now you gotta remember there's a 30-pound vacuum in your air conditioning system. Okay? So now we're gonna open up these valves. Open them up wide open. Just like that. We're gonna open this one up wide open. Okay? So now if you look at the gauges, you can see we still have the 30 pounds of vacuum on it. See? There's the 30 pounds. You're still in the negative. So now what you want to do is you want to slowly open up the low side. And what you're doing, this is already open, okay? This is already open. So now you're pulling R134A from that can because the system's got a vacuum on it, okay? System's got a vacuum on it. Basically, the system's going to suck the R134A through the manifold, through the hoses, and into the system. So we're going to do the low side first. So I'm going to crack open the low side. All right. And right now, there's just liquid going into the air conditioning system. Just liquid. All right, and you can see through there. You can see it going into the system. Okay, hold on. I got another phone call. Be back in a second. Okay, getting back to the AC. Okay, so now you got to remember that according to the Mazda Miata book here, it says that that it wants a 21.2 ounces. Okay, and you know that we got 12.3. All right, so now if I leak out some R134A into the air, I'm not supposed to do that really, but just so happened I leaked a little bit out. We don't really care because basically these two cans, we know if we put these two cans into the system, it's a little too much. But is it going to affect the system? I don't think so. Not like I said, it's just a little too much. It's not. Anyways, I usually put 2 cans into the system and it seems to work really good for me. So my camcorder's about to die, so let me hook the cord into it. I'll be back in a second. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, so well, you can see that the low side's gone way up. Okay, so we open this up, and now we know our cans pretty much all going into the low side. Okay, so we open up the low side first. Now we're going to open up the high side. Okay, open up the high side. We're going to let that whole can go into the high side too. So now you got the high side and the low side opened up. All right. So this is opened up, wide open. High sides open up, wide open. Low sides wide open. So I would say pretty much this whole can, pretty close to it's gone into the system. So now what we need to do is basically we got to start the car. And if I start the car, I'm gonna back it outside because this car stinks. So before we do that, before we do all that, what you need to do is now we have to close both the low side and the high side. Okay, make sure low side's closed, high side's closed. And then I'm going to start the car. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to very, when the car's running, I'll turn the air conditioner on. When the air conditioner turns on, this is going to go back down to probably 10. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to very slowly, while the car's running, open up the low side very carefully, very slowly. And I won't let it go over 40 pounds. And I'm going to slowly put the liquid into the system just from the low side, never touching the high side, just from the low side, never letting the gauge go over 40 pounds as the system's filling. And basically then the only thing we got left to do is to empty that can and one more can into the system, and that's it. The system's done. You don't add any more. We don't have to fool with the system after that. 2 cans, and it's actually, we're a little overfilled with 2 cans. So that's my next job. So before we start the car, I make sure everything's got to close. For sure, this vacuum, this can remain open until I go to put the other can on. Then this has to be closed off, okay, so that I can put the other can on. So it's going to be hard for me to show you this when I'm doing it, because the car's going to be running. So all right, so that's our next job, is to back this car out, make sure that none of my hoses get caught in the alternator. We definitely don't want no hoses caught in the alternator. That'd be very bad. So make sure your hoses are clear. Hoses are clear. Nothing's going to get caught in the alternator. And we're going to back the car out. Once I back it out, I'm going to turn the air conditioning on, and then I'm going to slowly add the R134A into the system. So I'm going to try to get you guys here so you can see what's going on, hopefully. I'll open up the door. Where is it? Hopefully the camera doesn't die. You guys can see what's happening. Right, you guys can see what's happening there, right? And this time the car should start without any problems, because this time I got my air bleeds back to where I originally had it, 1 1/4 out. And that's where it's supposed to be. I tried squeezing them down a little tighter and lean it up, but the motor don't like that. Doesn't want to start. And when I'm on the road, I can tell that it's got a real bad hesitation off the beginning of the throttle. So anyways, okay. Double check everything. Make sure hoses are not in the way. Let's see if this thing will fire up. So I'm gonna fire up the car, put that other can in there, and then air conditioning's done. I'll check everything. Okay, well, 2 cans have gone into the system, and air conditioning is done. The only thing you gotta do now is, let me show you. Basically, what you didn't see that I did there is that I closed this valve, Now we're gonna open this up. This is gonna let the Schrader valve off. I'm gonna pop this just like that. And we're gonna do the same thing to this side. We gotta unscrew the red knob on the top. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna unlock the Schrader valve. Make sure it's all the way. Keep going till you can't go any further. Now I gotta remember that this side here this high side can get, in the summertime, it can get up there. I can get up to 220 pounds. So you gotta be careful with this. You don't get your fingers behind it. All right, because this one's gonna it's gonna be a bit of a pop. All right, I can't do it with one hand. So you guys are gonna have to bear with me here. Oh, it wasn't so bad. Usually it's got a lot of pressure on there, but it's also it's also 45 degrees out. So it's not the kind of weather to be doing air conditioning, but I wanted to show you guys. And that's it. You know, that's the proper way to do your air conditioning. At least it's the way I do my air conditioning. I don't know if it's the proper way, but it's how I do mine. And like I said, we get some nice weather here. Hopefully I'm hoping for 2 months, but usually in 4 months. You know, the air conditioning in that car will be so cold, you freeze your hands right off. But so anyways, I'm almost out of gas in the car, so I don't even think I got enough to make it to the gas station. But I'd like to take it out a couple more times. But I gotta get gas. Anyways, all right, I'll take you for a ride. We'll see ya. Yeah, something I forgot to tell you about the air conditioning. When you're done, make sure you bleed all your gauges, you bleed all your hoses, and you put your caps back on the high side and low side. All right, I gotta go get some gas. I'll see you soon.